Now, I've been calling out these fake independents for months, of course. They're running in traditionally Liberal seats. They're pushing a green left ideological agenda, and they repeatedly refuse to say which party they'll support in the quite likely event of a hung parliament, as I've shown you before.
I'll negotiate with both of the major parties on the basis of the things for which I have been elected.
I'm about the policies, not the parties. And frankly, if you talk to the people of Wentworth, I think they care about the policies, not the parties.
Well, who knows? Who knows what will happen when it comes Anthony up?
Why don't you?
Well, because we don't know who's going to win what seats, Trent. It's quite simple.
Well, there's some new polling out that reveals exactly what most of us think about the independents' secrecy in this case. For more on that, I'm joined by Nick Cater, the Executive Director of the Menzies Research Centre. Thanks for joining us, Mick. Do you think that that voters really expect this from the independents? There are some people who just say, no, we want an independent and leave it in their hands.
Well, actually, the polling shows clearly that that's not the case. I think 62% of people overall are saying, yes, they should declare which party they'll support in
We'll just get this up then, Nick. We'll get that up in a graphic. The question asked here in this Compass polling is, do you think independents should be required to declare which major party they'll support if there's not an outright majority result in the election? And as you say, 62% say yes, 20% are neutral, and only 18%, less than 1 in 5, say that they don't need to have that declaration made to them.
That's right. And then actually, when you look through to the parties, I don't know if you've got those figures here, it's higher for coalition voters. So coalition voters, 72%. That's, 7 out of 10 say yes, the fair, the decent thing to do is to declare which party you'll support in a hung parliament. Even Labor voters, 6 out of 10 Labor voters say that too. So I think there's clearly an expectation in the public that should happen. And I think if the independents keep playing this sort of cute game, well, I'll see what happens on the night, I don't think that's going to wash with people. That'll get people nervous. I'm also picking up, incidentally, Chris, as you might be, this issue of a hung parliament really is cutting through now. A large number of voters in some of these seats are saying, look, I think a hung parliament is a bad idea. It'll be a weak parliament. It'll be a bad parliament. And they're opposed to that too. So, and the other thing I think that's creeping in some seats is a feeling that these independents are already, well, they may be reasonable local members, but there's only a limited amount they can do as independents. You need really to be part of a major party to really get action for your constituents.
Yeah,
so
I think there's. I think this declaration of who they would support to form government is so important. You'd almost want some sort of legislation to force people to declare it. I think that's probably too heavy-handed and probably impractical. But what you do need is, this is where the Fourth Estate plays a role, and you'd be onto this as a former newspaper editor. This is where the media should be putting pressure on these independents. Now, we call them out for this here on Sky News. They've been pushed a little bit by News Corp media more broadly, but they're getting a free ride from the ABC and the Nine media as if it's not an issue. And it is the issue about them, surely. Mm.
Yeah, great respect for Rebecca Sharkey in Mayo, who has said which way she'll go, which is unusually to the coalition. But I think that you can assume, and I think this is almost certain, that you can assume they're going to go Labour Greens unless they absolutely declare otherwise. Because when you look at the platform that they're on, you look at who's funding them. I mean, Brad Norrington's been doing some great work on this in The Australian, getting behind Simon Holmes Court and his renewable energy interests. That money is filtering through to back them. Plus the fact that Adam Menzies came out so strongly at the National Press Club a couple of weeks ago saying what a wonderful group of people they were and what wonderful allies they would be in government. There's only one conclusion a reasonable voter can draw, but I think it's going to be harder for them than they think unless they're clear and upfront about who they will back in a hung parliament.
There's no doubt. Everything about them says they'll be Labor Greens, but they're just hiding that. They're being dishonest with voters by not declaring their intentions to back a Labor Greens government. Look, just another question unrelated to this really in this Compass polling. Relates to the issue we're talking about with Catherine Deves. It's asked the question, independent member for Warringah, Zali Stegel, says anyone who objects to trans women athletes, biological men playing in female sport, is transphobic. Do you agree? And unsurprisingly, 62% of people say no, with just 23% yes. This was her response to Catherine Deves, and it shows that Catherine Deves' argument is the one most people agree with, obviously.
It's a very strange issue, isn't it, Chris? Because you'd think, watching the mainstream media, I mean, apart from, notable exceptions like yourselves, through The Guardian, the ABC, you'd think this woman had said the most outrageous thing in the world. And yet the polling clearly shows that in case of coalition voters, 4 out of 5 are on her side on this issue. So it's very strange. I can't think of anything like it since Pauline Hanson in 1996, when she was, condemned for political incorrectness the first time she stood, and the view was she would get trounced at the election, but because she won a Labour-held seat and has been in politics ever since.
Exactly.
So this is one of those cases where you've got a candidate that is speaking what people really think, and most of them are too nervous to say so. And I think people would be surprised on the night the amount of support there is for this woman.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to watch. Thanks for joining us again, Nick.
Thanks, Chris.
Nick Cater there heads up the Menzies Research Centre.